Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS core plays for this week's Fortinet Championship. Gonna break down 4 of my foundational plays for this week, both for DFS, GPPs, and of course for a few outright bets as well. I'm excited to be back at the action after a few weeks off, and though it's not really a top tier field or golf course, we've still got those large field tournaments to go out there and try and take down, and some units to try and add to the bankroll on the outright side. So a lot of info to get into. Let's go ahead and start it off with a look at my key stats of the week. Silverado Resort and Spa isn't really a unique track by any means. It's also not an architectural masterpiece by any means, but it's out there in Napa Valley, California, and you're going to see a lot of scoring this week. So for a fall series event that doesn't really have all that excitement around it, it gets the job done, right? Some of the players get to enjoy, everything that Napa has to offer, and then just from the watching perspective, we get another tournament to bet on, and of course some GPP lineups out there too. So it's a little bit nondescript. So if we're looking for a certain type of player around Silverado, you're not really going to find that here. Any type of player can get it done. It's a short track, a lot of wedges in hand, and all of the par fives are reachable by everyone in the field. So you're not going to see a huge distance factor. You're not going to see a huge accuracy factor off the tee. And even from the approach versus like putting perspective, it's not a course where like ball strikers are favored over guys that are putting specialists. You've seen a wide variety of winners. So when we look through our key stats here, maybe a little bit less important for a week like this than just overall talent level, right? If you have somebody that's a top tier player, pretty much no matter how they get it done, they can probably find success at the Fortinet Championship. And after any sort of an extended break like we've had over the last 2 weeks, in fact, a majority of this field, right, didn't even make it to the playoffs. So plenty of them have been off for over 4, sometimes 5, 6 weeks at this point. You can pretty much reset the recent form. So if anything, I think if we're going to focus on anything this week, you want to look at some of the wedges because there's 8 of the 10 par 4s where you're going to have a wedge in hand. You can look at birdie or better percentage because of how easy the course can play. And then outside of that, it's completely wide open. I mean, you can see I have some par 4 scoring numbers on here with a bunch of the shorter par 4s, par 5 scoring, a few comp courses, but this isn't really the type of tournament or really the type of golf course to go out there and say, I only want really good putters, or I only want guys that are long off the tee, accurate off the tee, so on and so forth. It's much more wide open at Silverado, and because of that break, I think the stats might be a little bit overrated out here. So it's not to say that you can avoid your modeling, your projections, so on and so forth, but it's definitely a week to go out there and play the game theory edge. With that in mind, we have a few pivots for our core plays this week, both from the DFS ownership perspective and then from the outright number perspective too. I think that all 4 of these players are going to be lower owned than they probably should be. And then from the outright number perspective, are also being a little bit disrespected. So let's start with Justin Thomas, who outside of Max Homa, right, might have the best course history of anyone at Silverado. And you may say, he's only played here once in the last 5 years, which is true, right? His last start here was in 2019 where he finished in 4th, but the start before that, he had an 8th place finish, and the start before that, a 3rd place finish. His only poor start around Silverado was his first ever start, I believe back in like 2016, 2015, when he was extremely new to playing professional golf, and that was a missed cut. But ever since then, it's been 3 straight top 8s, 2 top 4 finishes at Silverado. And, to circle back to the stats, right, we don't want to overrate these things here, but he's one of the best wedge players in the world, maybe the best, right, on the PGA Tour. He's one of the best birdie makers, right? Even last year was a top 5 birdie maker on tour, despite having a horrible season, right, by pretty much everyone's means. Some of the other metrics here really don't even matter all that much, but he checks the bent POA numbers. He looks at, pretty good around the green, one of the best players in that category on the PGA Tour. If you look at the stats long enough, you can convince yourself to play Justin Thomas. You look at the course history, you can start to get that going as well. And then when you consider that he's going to be the lowest owned of anyone up here in the 10K range, maybe outside of Cam Davis, maybe he ends up slightly lower owned than what we have JT at. But Homa, significantly higher owned. Believe it or not, as of right now, my early ownership projections have Jaeger higher owned than a Justin Thomas. And if that's going to be the case, that is a ridiculous overreaction. Sure, Jaeger's in pretty good recent form. You can see he has the best form of anyone up there in the 10K range. He's been hitting the ball well, really good from tee to green over the last few months. there's been a month break, right? These guys kind of get reset to their long-term baselines. And if we're just looking at pure talent level, Max Homa, you could argue, is the best player in this field, right, going for the three-peat. But Justin Thomas has to be in that argument, right? It's not like a clear-cut winner there with the Max Homa. JT, the longer-term player that's won majors, right, is a proven tour winner out there. And I know I'm a sucker for JT. He's one of my favorite players, right? So I will find any reason possible to go out there and play Justin Thomas. But I think it's well substantiated, right? You're talking about somebody that has some of the highest upside of anyone out there on the PGA Tour. So given that he's had a few weeks off, right? He didn't have to play during the playoffs. So he should have been working on his game out there. Maybe he comes out here and looks a little bit sharper, right? He's got the Ryder Cup motivation going for him. And really what I'm hunkering down on here is a low-owned, or at least a lower-owned than it should be JT, with a really good track record around Silverado that's motivated, right? That's trying to get ramped up for the Ryder Cup. So really, I could see it going poorly. He's a volatile player, right? He missed his fair share of cuts there in 2022, of course, towards the end of 2023. But I think he's got enough upside to substantiate an outright bet and to take him in some tournament lineups too. Next up, we've got Sahith Theegala, who, if we could pretty much copy and paste the argument from Justin Thomas and then use it for Sahith Theegala, right? Extremely similar type of players. Maybe not the track record, right? That's, decent for a Sahith Theegala, but not nearly as elite, right, as what we've seen for Justin Thomas, but did finish in 6th place here last year, made the cut there in 2021, and a 14th there 3 years ago, which is very respectable given how new he was, how green he was out there on the PGA Tour. What you like about Sahith is when we look at some of the stats, right? The wedges could be a little bit better, but one of the more aggressive birdie makers on the PGA Tour, right, sets up a ton of birdie looks. The off the tee leaves a little bit to be desired. The putting on Bent Poa is really good. He's got a few things working for him and a few things working against him, right? And you would think somebody of his pedigree would get attention up here, but because of the recent form, because he's one of the worst players at the top of the board when it comes to their actual shots gained metrics, no one wants to play Sahith, right? In terms of ownership, he's going to come in lower owned than an Eric Cole, which to me is just egregious, right? And I'm a huge Eric Cole truther. He's from one of the country clubs just down the road from here. He's a local legend down here in South Florida. He's not a better play than Sahith Theegala, right? Sahith kills it out there on the West Coast on courses that he's, grew up on playing, right? A lot of the same type of agronomy. And a course where a ball shaper, right, somebody that can get themselves out of trouble is going to have a lot of success doing so, right? There's some trees out there. There's a few bad spots you can get into around Silverado, but the rough isn't all that thick, and you can shape the ball out of it, right? If you're below a tree, if you need to hit a huge hook to get it on the green, a huge slice to get it on the green, Sahith is going to have the ability to do that, right? And I think that's why in major championships, maybe he doesn't play as well, right? When you're out there hitting out a 4 to 6 inch rough, it's hard to shape the ball. It's hard to use that creativity that makes Sahith such a good player. And I think at a course with next to no rough, right, when he does get offline, which is going to happen for Sahith, right, he's very inaccurate off the tee, very, very inaccurate. But he should be able to bail himself out here, or at least he's going to have an opportunity to go out there and show off that creativity. So I like that for him. I also like his wide range of outcomes. That's why I took him as an outright bet this week. But even for large field GPP contests, when Sahith, as a field player has his best stuff, it's usually a top 10 finish. And in large field GPPs, that's the kind of performance that we need to take home the large field contest. So kind of like JT, an extremely volatile play. Sahith was really good at making cuts towards the beginning of last year, not so much towards the last few months. Hopefully, he can bring out a little bit of that volatility and it spikes in the positive direction for us. I'll remind you guys, if you're looking for access to everything that you're seeing on the sheet here, right, you can download all of these sheets for your own use if you join my Patreon page. So check out the link in the description of the video. I have changed up the tiers a little bit so that you can customize it to select all the content that you're looking for specifically and not pay for anything that you don't need, right? So if you're somebody that lives in a state where like DFS is legal and props aren't, well, I posted on there both for NFL and for golf, like you see here, ways to just choose, right, DFS or just choose props. And if you want to take both of them, right, there's a tier for a discounted price there. So that's how I'm handling the Patreon. If you want access to everything that's blacked out, that's where you'll find all of it. That includes my ownership projections for everyone, my player pool, of course, and access to just the research sheet, right? Seeing all my modeling, all the different recent form metrics that I put together for you guys, shots gained metrics over the last 36 and last 12 measured rounds, just a way to simplify your process, right? You're not gonna have a million different tools to work with. You can have just one simplified central sheet to do all of your analysis with, whether it's using my modeling or even using the shots gained metrics, right? Some of the recent form metrics for your own modeling, right? I try to centralize all the data for you, not just the modeling and projections, so that if you have your own process, you can use it, and it simplifies that for you, right? So that's the idea with what we're putting out there. Great community. We have the Discord community working with that as well, and just ever growing. So check it out if you've been wondering about that, and if you want to see all the players that I'm getting to. Our last two core plays now that we got the shameless plug out of the way is a $9,100 Andrew Putnam. So this is a little bit more out of right field, right? I'd say Sahith, JT, you're going to see a lot of people this week, talk them up, right? They're no-brainer plays that have some upside. They're just regulars on the PGA Tour. Andrew Putnam, not so much, right? Your casual golf fan might not even know what Andrew Putnam looks like. Now, they probably know of him if they play DFS because he's been pretty good over the last 6 months. What I like about Andrew Putnam is part of this is narrative based. He's from Washington. He's talked about in multiple interviews, even at the BMW Championship, which of all places, long, super hard golf course, right? Shouldn't have fit Andrew Putnam's game, right? It was super wet out there. It was playing even longer than normal. He said he liked it because of how tree lined it was. Out here in Napa, he's back on his home surface, right? He's from just up the road, I'd say like 3-4 hours up the road there in Washington. Actually, I think he might even be from closer than that. I know he went to college at some stage there in California too, went to Washington for his last few years. I really like him at these tree-lined golf courses that are shorter. And unfortunately for Putnam, a lot of the tree-lined golf courses that he talks about being really comfortable on are long, like Valspar championships, BMW championships, right? Where you kind of have to be a ball striking specialist to get it done. Now we get him at Napa Valley, which is shorter, right? He can hit those wedges, which he's a top 25 player in pretty much all the different wedge ranges, and just lean into the putter. And though I think the course fit is really, really good here, it hasn't shown up that much, right? He's played here 3 times. He's made the cut all 3 times, right? So it hasn't gone poorly. Just we haven't seen that top 10 that I think he has in him at this kind of course. So I'm going to play Andrew Putnam this week. It's a little bit speculative. It's a little bit narrative based, right? Him just telling us that he likes courses with those shoots off the tee. And it's more so just based on the stats, right? I mean, let's look at the last 36 rounds, right? Gaining over half a stroke on approach, 0.7 strokes per round with the putter. That's pretty much what we're looking for, right? For somebody to go low, they've got to get hot with the irons, got to get hot with the putter, right? Of course, pretty much any golf tournament, you got to get hot with the putter to have a top-end finish. And that's pretty much his identity out there. So I like his floor this week, but I also like the upside at a course where he hasn't really shown that upside yet. So I'm hoping the ownership will stay somewhat low on Andrew Putnam, which would make him an excellent tournament play for some leverage. And our last play is kind of similar. It's a Mark Hubbard, another guy who played really well last year, maybe not as well towards the end of the year. Kind of fell off a little bit, but now we have that 1 month break to work with, right? We can kind of reset and Andrew Putnam back to his baseline. Same thing with Mark Hubbard, which if anything helps these two players, right? They didn't end the year on a particularly bright note in either case. Mark Hubbard, though, an extremely aggressive player, really, really good with the irons and can get hot with the putter. Pretty much an Andrew Putnam, except a little bit more inconsistent, right? Putnam's really, really good with the putter pretty much every single week. Mark Hubbard, not so much. But the thing that separates the two, and I think actually makes Hubbard maybe better for the GPP format, I'd say for outrights, I treat them pretty similarly. But for large field GPPs, I like Mark Hubbard because of his range of outcomes, right? Because he has weeks where he's losing 2-3 strokes putting. Sometimes he has weeks where he's gaining 4-5 strokes putting. It makes him somebody that's a top 10 or pretty much a missed cut machine. And when we're playing in a volatile large field GPP format, that is the money, right? That's what we're looking for in some of these type of plays. So Mark Hubbard, $8,300. Again, a player that I'm hoping stays relatively low owned because of some of the recent play. But his event history is okay too, right? 21st last year, 16th back there 2 years ago. Did miss one of his last 4 cuts, but then had a 13th there 4 years ago. So overall, I think he's got the course fit that we're looking for and potentially might be the type of leverage you're looking for in large field GPPs too. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the core plays this week. As per usual, I appreciate all the support here on the channel. So go ahead, smash that like button on the way out of here. And also for the algorithm, go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning this golf tournament. Perhaps it's somebody you've already fired an outright on, or maybe you're trying to think about potentially getting to that exposure. Let me know what you guys are thinking, right? Always love to hear your thoughts, bounce a few ideas off of one another, and get ready to get after this week. Speaking of, we will have our DFS live stream tomorrow. That'll be Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. On there, we'll be going through all the last second info that you need for this week. So bring any questions that you've got. We're going to go through the weather, talk about all the different game theory notes heading into lock, and I'll get ready to go out there and smash both for DFS, outrights, and for a few prop bets as well. If you haven't already joined the Patreon, I'd also recommend doing that. That way you get all the content that I'm producing on a weekly basis. Obviously, I try to put out videos, give you guys a good idea of what we're working with, but a majority of what I'm working on, right, what I'm spending, I'd say like 60-70% of my time on, is what I'm posting over there on the Patreon page, right? I try and give those people the most value humanly possible. Also try and protect a lot of the different fantasy picks that I'm putting out so that not everyone out there, right, knows the low-owned leverage plays that I'm getting to, right? So it's great to talk up 4, sometimes 8, even 12 players on the channel here, but we've got to keep a little bit behind there to keep it valuable. So if you want to get all of that info, you guys know where to find it. Link is in the description. But until next time, I appreciate the support like before.